Okay, but this is, so you're going to say all of this, so you'll do the welcome to country and everything, and then introduce. Yeah. And then you can go into more detail. I haven't got this. Yeah, so maybe we can start here. I don't know, unless you want to do the first one. Everyone could have a seat and we might get started on time. If there's anyone still out in the hallways finishing their muesli and tea or coffee, please feel free to come in and take a seat here on this glorious Melbourne morning. I'm sure the sun will come out soon. Wumchik everyone, and welcome to the launch of the Australia-Japan Local Government Collaboration, Enriching Communities Through International Engagement. I'd like to start with acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Burrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, on whose unceded lands this event is being held and where we conduct the business of the university. RMIT University respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders past and present as holders of Indigenous knowledges of this land. On behalf of the College of Business and Law, I would like to welcome everyone to RMIT. My name is Professor Tracy Taylor. I've got this very long title. I am the Associate Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research and Innovation within the college, which means that I get to work with a wonderful array of talented researchers, amazing industry and government partners across a range of different areas in the college. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the people who are currently here and will be joining and sharing their thoughts on the Australia-Japan relations, particularly Lord Mayor Sally Kapp, AO, our Consular General of Japan, Mr. Shimada, who I was just saying that commiserations that we should jointly share an appreciation of our women's football teams, that they got as far as they did in the Women's World Cup, but and played very, very well, but we're not in the finals. But I'm sure that we can both take pride in the advances of both teams and of women's sport in both countries as well. And the Consular General was saying he was actually out at Federation Square watching the Australia game. And I'd also like to welcome Wendy Hullinson as Director and Executive Vice President of Mitsui Company Australia and board member of the Australia-Japan Foundation, which funded the research. And I note that Mitsui's tagline is 360-degree business innovation. And that's certainly something that our College of Business and Law can relate to as well. Innovation in research, social impact, and engagement with our communities. At RMIT, we aim to foster international engagement that makes a social and economic impact in all the communities in which we operate and where we conduct research. Our RMIT Barcelona base gives us access into Europe, and we conduct a range of research projects with many European and UK partners and collaborators, universities, government and business. Our Vietnam campus is doing some really exciting research in digital innovation, digital knowledge development, and smart cities, and gives us a footprint into Southeast Asia. And our Singapore operations provide us an entree to do some really exciting work, particularly around work integrated learning with our education programs that we offer in Singapore. And I could go on. And the College of Business and Law, we do research across the globe, particularly focusing on the Asia-Pacific region in Europe, but also we have a footprint in the Americas and in Africa, where we're doing work across a range of different areas associated with cybersecurity, sustainable supply chains, business and human rights, gender and diversity, health futures, and a range of digital technologies to do with Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, etc. So this research that we will hear today is a particular project, two-year project, collaboration between Australia and Japan, led by Dr. Shay Fan and her colleagues. And we're very excited to hear not only what they did and what the outcomes of the research are, but how it can lead to future research collaborations. As many of you probably know, RMIT are very connected with Japan in a range of different, not only research and educational projects, but also through over 20 academic partners in Japan and a range of different industry partners as well. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today, and I will hand over to Nicola, who will be emceeing the event.
Thank you, Professor Charlie. Well, good morning, everyone, and such a warm welcome to this special event. As we heard before, we're going to be launching the research report, Australia-Japan Local Government Collaboration, Enriching Communities Through International Engagement. What a wonderful topic for us to be talking about today. And it is an honour to be with you all today. My name is Nicola Gibbs, and I will be taking you through today's proceedings. I'd also like to acknowledge some of our guests here, aside from the speakers, the Vice Consul, Mr. Chirac, and his colleague, Mr. Goldschlanger from the United States Consulate, and Consul General Shimada Jinji's colleague, Consul Kansiri. Thank you so much for coming here today. A special welcome to individuals as well who are joining us in person, but also online. From our various Australia-Japan sister cities who are here with us today. We are so delighted that you can join with us. I would also like to add my acknowledgements to our research sponsors, the Australia-Japan Foundation, for also the Sister Cities Australia and Japan Local Government Centre, who have both provided strong support in the research process. And of course, I would like to thank RMIT for hosting today and the Asia Society, who will be running a roundtable after this event. And finally, but definitely not last, the people who are involved behind the scenes in making today possible. Thank you. I'd also like to welcome all of you who are here today. Your presence and engagement are what make events like this meaningful. Today, we are here to celebrate and explore the people-to-people connections between Australia and Japan through the lens of sister city relationships. And this research was conducted by Dr. Shay Fan, Professor Hiraki Mori, Dr. Tsai Leng Tam, Professor Timothy Bartram, who's joining us online today, Dr. Matthew Walker, and Dr. Charlie Huang. This research sheds light on the significance of these relationships and the impact on our community. After a presentation from the researchers, we will have an opportunity for you to ask questions. So I encourage you to start considering what questions you would like to ask. And then we will hear from our distinguished guests, which Professor Taylor introduced earlier. And for those of you who are attending here in person, you are invited to join us for lunch after the event. So before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. Please ensure that your mobile phones are on silent. And the emergency exit, please follow our volunteers just around the back. And the restrooms are also located outside the doors. Now, if you would please join me in welcoming the stars of the show, Professor Bartram, Dr. Fan, Dr. Tam, and Professor Morey to the stage or screen. Professor Bartram, we'd love to hear from you now.
Okay, thank you. Can we roll through the slides? Thank you very much. Welcome and thank you so much for your attendance. Sister Cities are people-to-people platforms that generate, create, and support mutual understanding, goodwill, and peace. Sister Cities International began in 1956 when US President Eisenhower envisaged a way for US cities to create formal partnerships with foreign cities to exchange information, ideas, and to develop friendships and deepen cultural understandings. And exciting is the fact that 60 years of history between Lismore, Yamatotakada, sister city, which began in August 1963. We have over 60 years of generating over 100 Australian and Japanese sister cities. In fact, I think from last count, there was about 107, which is astonishing. And what we set out to do in this report is examine how effective Australian Japanese sister cities actually are and the strength of those relationships and what makes them strong. Next slide, please. Oops, you missed one. Yes, thank you. You can all download, and I suspect most of you would have a copy of our report. You can also download using the QR code. Next slide, please. Okay, the project team, which have been introduced, but I'd like to begin by thanking the Australian Japan Foundation for sponsoring our grant. I'd like to also thank the Australian government for also sponsoring our grant. I'd like to thank Sister Cities Australia and Claire for their wonderful support in supporting us with sending out the questionnaire and generating the support for our study among their members. Our project was not without COVID interruptions, as all of our lives have been interrupted during the COVID period. But nevertheless, with the wonderful support of our team and our partners and the wonderful people that participated in our study, we were able to complete the study in an excellent time. And in fact, all of our interviews were conducted using MS Teams. So it wasn't easy, but with the support of all of our friends and colleagues and partners, we were able to develop and complete our report. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, in terms of research facts, our study is unique, and to our knowledge, it's the only one that's been undertaken that uses a comparative set of analytical tools to examine the sister city relationship that is between Japanese local governments and Australian local councils. And we set out in which we first of all interviewed 7 Japanese representatives, 13 interviews in Australian with local governments, of which 7 were paired cities. So we were able to compare the views and contrast those views between those respondents. Secondly, we developed a cross-national survey in which we received a pretty good response rate, given the fact that there's around about 100 local sister city relationships. we were able to, interestingly and surprisingly, get 43 responses from local Japanese governments and 43 responses from Australian councils. And what I'll do is I'll hand over to Shay, and she will talk about the interviews, and then Sei-Leng will discuss through her video on or outlining the survey, the questionnaire responses, and the survey results. Okay, so thanks very much. Over to you, Shay.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. So after we talk with staff members of councils in sister cities, we are excited to realize that sister city relationships are like hidden gold. Communities in both countries have done so many wonderful things, and their achievement should be shared with the public. And we are proud to have this opportunity to share their story. First, we have found that the foundations of sister city relationships have been achieved. Goodwill, mutual understanding, and trust have been developed through community engagement. So, for example, sister cities often send regular seasonal greetings to each other on Christmas, New Year, or anniversary of their relationships. When Sydney had the bushfire, their sister city Nagoya raised funds for them. And similarly, when the Council of Port Phillip, they also raised funds and goods for their Japanese sister city, Yugawara, when they suffered from earthquake. So these actions actually show that sister cities care for each other and they have each other in their heart. Psychological connections have been developed in communities across the ocean. So of course, there are more regular, larger scale activities. The most common activity is educational exchange. So we think young people, primary schools or junior schools, they are the biggest beneficiary of sister city relationships. Sister city is an ideal bridge for schools to develop exchange programs, overseas visits, homestays. So this image is a group of Australian teenagers visited Japan on a school trip. Indeed, we found educational exchange in every council we have contacted. They didn't even stop during the COVID. And this is one example. Two schools in Hobart and Yatsu. So they were inspired by the Tokyo Olympic Games, and they developed virtual Olympic competition. Except the fact this is different, because in this game, Japanese students played kendama, a traditional Japanese game, and the Australian students played stone throwing. Our interviewee from Kawasaki highlighted how the seeds of goodwill and trust are developed through exchange programs. So he said, if young children can interact with each other, their relationship will continue into the future. So the second type of activity is cultural exchange. So it goes beyond the youth group and reaches the broader society. And sister cities are extremely creative in developing new cultural exchange activities, including sport events, food festivals, they're building sister city gardens, only name a few. And today we want to highlight one example from Council of Gladstone, Queensland, and their connection with Saki. They have regular photographer competition. So in a typical year, so for example, they ask the competition, the theme of the competition is to show your city to the residents of your sister city. So in a typical year, about 100 photographers enter the competition. So 30 images will be shortlisted. And they will first be displayed within their home city, so people can vote for the best image. And after that, these shortlisted images will be shown in their sister city. So this Joyful River was the winning image in 2020 from Gladstone. Our interview also showed why Japanese Australian cities like each other. So Japanese cities like Australia because of the language environment, the small time difference, the landscape, and safe environment. And Australian councils like Japan because of tradition, history, and food. Cultural exchanges have significantly raised mutual understanding between Australia and Japan. So our interviewees from Gladstone said, "Where there's a will, there's a way." So if people want to connect, and they will make it happen. So in addition to this traditional type of collaborations, we also found emerging collaborations. This is because communities want to explore opportunities to leverage the existing trusting relationship to bring more benefit to their communities. And such collaborations often the community-driven. They may or may not be led by the councils directly. So the first type of collaboration is knowledge exchange. So one example is Kanagawa and Gold Coast. They both have beaches and they have beach culture. So they signed a coastline-centered friendship agreement. So one component of this agreement is Coast Guard, a lifeguard exchange. So in 1 year, Japanese lifeguards visit Gold Coast so they can learn how to use new equipment for life saving. And the next year, Gold Coast lifeguards visit one city in Kanagawa, and they can learn surf life-saving techniques. Another example is the animal exchange between two zoos in Nagoya and Sydney. So the Sydney Zoo actually gave Australian animals, koalas, to Nagoya, and in return they also receive rare animals, including a one-horned rhino. So behind the stage of the animal culture ambassadors, it's knowledge exchange, because the zookeepers need to communicate each other, visit each other to create ideal environment for the animals to live healthily in a foreign country. Another type of collaboration is environment. Both Australia and Japan are keen on environmental protection, and this can be the foundation for joint projects. And we found a really fascinating story about migrant birds. So those birds fly from Japan to Australia every year, and they make several stops in Brisbane, Gladstone, and the Greater Geelong. And these birds connect 3 pairs of sister cities. So Nagoya and the Greater Geelong signed wetland conservation agreement. So one component of this agreement is to have an environmental education program. So in a 6-year period, over 100 Japanese students visited wetland in Nagoya, in Greater Geelong. So they spend 3 days there, and they try to learn everything about wetland conservation and environmental protection initiatives. So our interviewee from Nagoya said, through the experience, students are not only able to grasp the ecosystem, but also understand the link between living creatures at a global level. Narashino and Brisbane also signed similar agreements, and they had similar activities. So Council of Gladstone uses the migrant birds as a symbol that connects Australia and Japan, Psyche and Gladstone. So this is the, and you can see this is the artwork of the migrant bird outside of their council building. So during the COVID pandemic, the community exchange was limited. However, the communities are hopeful and they are confident. And they said, if the birds can make the journey from Gladstone to Japan, we are also able to once again meet in person. So far, we have talked about the achievements of sister cities. Now, let's talk about challenges and difficulties that council face when managing sister city relationships. And the first one is money, budget. So when there's limited budget, council's hands are tied. So our research, in our research, we found that 22% of Australian councils said they only have $1,000 to $5,000 to manage regular cultural activities, exclude travel. Only 16% of Australian councils said they had a budget over 20,000 Australian dollars. So, however, 25% of Japanese councils said they had over 20,000 Australian dollars for the budget. The next difference is the difference in the government system, the structure of the government. So this has implications for the power of the council and the resources the council can have. So, and that comes subsequently affect their capabilities to support sister city relationships. So the last challenge is what's next. So after the trusting relationship is developed, how can we add new value to this relationship? So there are a variety of avenues, but sometimes the counterparts are not on the same page. So for example, the Australian Council may be interested in looking for economic returns, but the Japanese councils may be happy with the traditional exchanges. So this is something that councils need to work out in the future. So in order to compare the councils in Australia and Japan, we conducted research in both countries, and this is an example. So we asked the councils to answer the same set of questions in their own language. So this is an example of the phone format of this survey. We asked the council to evaluate their strengths, their capabilities in developing sustainable developmental goals. So we hope we can identify complementary capabilities so they can be the future collaboration opportunities. And we also ask, one example question is, we ask the council to say, what is the success factor for your sister city relationship with each other? Okay. However, I'm not going to, I cannot share the insights of the survey because my colleague, Celine, she has all the insights. Celine has relocated to Germany, so she pre-recorded her talk. So let's watch. Yeah.
Good day, everyone. I'm Seeling, and I will walk you through some of the notable findings from the survey. The first being the self-reported key strengths of the respective local councils. Starting with responses from the local Australian councils, the top 3 notable strengths were in the areas of cultural and student exchange, namely cultivating language exchange, promoting cultural awareness, and lastly, coming up at the top in terms of the most common strength noted by respondents was increasing student exchange opportunities. For responses from our Japanese local councils, advancing internationalization comes in top 3 in terms of the common key strengths, followed by promoting cultural awareness. There seems to be a congruence in terms of the most common key strengths reported by both Australian and also Japanese local council representatives, and that is increasing student exchange opportunities. Now looking at the least common strengths, coming in as the 3 least common key strengths reported by Australian local council representatives are increasing staff exchange, interestingly promoting sustainable development, and lastly, the least common being promoting issues around community safety. For Japanese local council representatives, promoting sustainable development and issues around community safety also makes the bottom 3 common key strengths noted, and also developing trade opportunities was also one of the least common strengths noted by the Japanese local councils. So interestingly, despite the increasing importance of sustainability and the pursuit of sustainable development goals, promoting sustainable development remains one of the least common key strengths noted by both Japanese and Australian local council representatives. This could represent an area for future development. On the other hand, student exchange and promoting cultural awareness appear to be the conventionally more common key strengths and noted by both Japanese and also Australian local council representatives. Next, we have a look at the self-reported current capabilities that local councils hold in the areas related to sustainable development goal areas. Potentially, Australian local council representatives could share expertise on disaster prevention and response, supporting vulnerable communities, and lastly on waste management, as respondents have indicated that these are some of the sustainable development practices where they hold currently strong capabilities in. Australian local councils may also wish to seek opportunities to develop the following sustainable development areas where respondents have rated having the lowest capabilities in, and that is public health management and also environmental sustainability. For our Japanese local council respondents, we see that coming in, having reported strong capabilities in environmental sustainability and public health management, and also in disaster prevention and response, and also in waste management. Japanese local councils reported having lowest capabilities in smart cities. So some key takeaways for us from this section is that environmental sustainability is a potential area for Australia-Japan sister city collaboration, as this appears to be one of the Japanese local council's strongest capabilities, whilst it's an area which Australian local councils have reported having least capabilities in. Supporting vulnerable communities is also another potential area for collaboration, given it is one of Australia's local councils' reported area in terms of having the top capabilities in. Lastly, it's important to consider what are some of the important factors that are required for the success of sister city relationships and international collaborations. Let's have a look at what our respondents have reported. From the perspective of Australian local councils, the ongoing activities between the two sister cities, the support from the sister city were noted as the top few key success factors. For Australian local councils, having the support of local councillors appears to be the most important success factor. For Japanese local councils, the unique success factor here is having the adequate allocation of human and financial resources. Otherwise, similar to Australia, local councils, the support of the sister city was also named as one of the most important factors for success in the sister city relationship or international collaboration, and the most important being having ongoing activities between the two cities. Overall, we see here some commonalities in terms of what makes successful sister-city relationships for both Australia and also our Japan local council. And that's having ongoing activities between the two cities and also having support from the sister city. Particularly if we're looking to support our Australian local councils in developing and maintaining successful sister city relationships and international collaborations, support from local councils appear to be one of the most important factors. In supporting our Japanese local councils in their sister city collaborations and international collaborations, attention should be paid to the allocation of human and financial resources. And that's all for my section here. I'll pass you off back to my team to continue with the presentation.
Yeah, and I would like to introduce our last speaker. So Professor Hiroaki Mori. Hiro, so he is an expert in public administration. So he was in Australia, interviewed Australian councils for sister cities before the COVID period. And he interviewed Japanese councils in Japan for this project during the COVID period. And Hiro is going to talk about his observations and reflections from the Japanese perspective. Here.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that I can come back to a lovely place, Melbourne, Australia, because it's been 5 years since I visited here previously. So I'm so passionate about talking about Japanese situations. Starting with the history of sister cities established by Japan and Australia. According to Professor Timothy, the first link was formed by Yamatotakada city and Lismore in 1963. And then, especially during the 1990s, there was a significant increase in municipalities forming sister city partnerships under Japan's internationalization policy. As a result, most agreements will be celebrating the 30th or 40th anniversary milestones. A sister link can easily become actually inactive without any follow-up efforts. My colleagues and I found that Japan-Australia sister city links have been extremely active. So the next one. Okay. I'd like to present impressive findings. First was educational benefits. As Dr. Sia and Dr. Serin have pointed out, Japan and Australia have invested in education. Indeed, education is highly valued from the Japanese perspective. The number of sister school agreements with Australia is the most popular among Japanese schools compared to other countries. Australia is number one country for Japanese. So actually, English language learning is a significant challenge for Japanese individuals nowadays, including me. And second was community engagement. Successful examples of Japanese sister cities have effectively achieved community engagement. For instance, the link between Susono in Shizuoka and Frankston in Victoria is one of the most excellent cases. Mechanisms for community involvement have been effective in achieving community engagement. In terms of Japan, international exchange associations have been worked well. This has led to a long-lasting trust with their Australian counterparts. The Frankston Susono Friendship Association, FISPA, contributes to enhancing the link with Susono while funded by Frankston Council. Therefore, municipal funding and community in-kind contributions are very crucial elements for sister city links. Okay, the third was enhancement efforts to community awareness. In Yamatotakada in Nara, primary schools have special program to learn about the sister city. This leads to gaining knowledge and awareness about partner cities among children. Additionally, city halls, Nagoya City and Susono City as well, display information and iconic things about Australian counterparts. Such displays provide motivation for engagement. The most impressive case is Belmont Park in Adachi Ward, Tokyo. It has Memorial Hall commemorating the link with Belmont, so it can successfully keep Belmont in the minds of Adachi citizens. Okay, on the other hand, I found some challenges on the Japanese side other than money issues. Yeah. First was the negative impact of the establishment boom in 1990s. The primary reason of the rapid spread of sister cities in Japan was sort of like bandwagon effects. It means jumping on the winning trend, a big trend. We should go rush on riding the bandwagon like that. So consequently, various sister city projects might have become path dependent. Like several Australian local councils, the establishment of general policy regarding sister cities and international cooperation is significant for Japan to implement regular evaluation in developing new interests and attractions along with changing times. And second was resource allocation challenges owing to community demographics. Municipalities with growing foreign populations experience conflicts over resource allocation between domestic multiculturalism and international exchanges. However, it seems that ongoing activities secure the legitimacy of resource allocation regarding sister city links. Finally, the sister cities seem to be alone. Several cities have lots of agreements like sister relationships, but there appear to be demarcation between them. So I'd like to suggest that flexible thinking, such as integrating different networks, relationships, can lead to various positive development. Okay, thank you thank you very much for taking the time to join today. Thank you.
Okay, so this is our highlights of our report and our key thoughts. Before we move to the next session, I would like to thank our volunteers from the Japanese study programs and volunteers from translating and interpreting programs. They have worked so hard for us in the morning. As people would say in Japanese, ご協力ありがとうございました. Thank you. And I give it to our chair, and we can move on to the Q&A session. Sorry.
Thank you so much. As we invite the research team to the stage, can you just join me once again in thanking them for that wonderful presentation? Do you want to come? Well, I know I have a few reflections and a number of questions from that presentation. I think what surprised me the most was some of the challenges and the things that were identified as the bottom three priorities for sister city relationships, particularly around trade and investment. As someone who can be quite myopic on that, I think what surprised me was that it wasn't one of the biggest outcomes from Australia-Japan sister city relationships, but rather this amazing opportunity we have in promoting cultural exchange. And I recall when I was in primary school and also high school hosting Japanese exchange students, and I learned so much from them. And I hope they learned just as much from being in Australia. And we got introduced to incredible different playgrounds games. And I know that from years after that, they were a firm favorite in the playground. So it's just wonderful to have these opportunities that sister city relationships like the ones that we've heard about today can have for building those people-to-people connections. So I hope you've been doing some thinking, that you've got a couple of questions up your sleeve. We have approximately 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. And I know that we all want to hear from more than a couple of people. So if you can keep your questions succinct, none of the common questions, and then we'll have roving microphones. If you could please introduce your name and where you're from, and then ask the question, and we'll throw it to the floor to answer. You got microphones?
Thank you very much. Are these working?
Yes, and so that's for people attending virtually as well.
Of course, I get it. Thank you. My name's Sally Capp. I am the Lord Mayor of Melbourne. Lucky me. Really delighted to be here this morning. And just reflecting on the breadth of priorities that local governments in Japan and local governments in Australia have from time to time, and how that can, I guess, broaden but also dilute where the focus is for the sister city relationships. Do you think that we can organise ourselves around the SDGs to bring more of a focus to those interactions? I say that the City of Melbourne was the first city in Australia to do a voluntary local review. We've spent a lot of time, effort and money organising ourselves to benchmark around the SDGs so that we can share, but also so that we can learn. And it would be really interesting to know if that could create a focus for interactions going forward from your perspective and research. Wasn't a very short question, sorry.
Thank you for your question. Actually, I should say I have no idea about that right now, because it's very challenging issue. As I said, including to integrate lots of different relationships with overseas cities. However, I've heard of Kawasaki City's information. They said we should learn about multiculturalism promotion from their sister city. So, but it's they are struggling with the integrating so many different things. So I'm so sorry. I can't answer. And I cannot tell you the available information right now. It's the we should keep our research in the future. Sorry.
I think because the findings is very surprising to me. Given the SDGs, there are 17 SDGs, and the SDG 11 is sustainable city and communities. And the list actually probably took a lot of burden and pressure on the local government actually to implement the SDGs. And to me, this is a big actually potential area for collaborations because both sides of the local government are doing that. And in some area, they are doing very, very well. So potentially, I believe this could be actually a big opportunities in the challenges for city-to-city relationship in the future.
That's good idea. In terms of Japanese perspectives, we have sort of demarcation between administrative offices. Environmental office do things by themselves. On the other hand, sister city offices do that differently. So we have challenging issues to cooperate between local governments, administrative offices. So it's Japanese perspective. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm Stanley, and I work in the marketing area. And thank you for this impressive, about the collaboration project. And I have two questions. First is there any ongoing or maybe a following projects about this collaboration? And also the second question is, I'm not sure about if there are any city ambassadors for the sister cities, because I feel like if this doesn't exist, then maybe we can have maybe a city ambassador or student ambassadors that can maybe promote or maybe give more seeable on the social media or maybe in the cities to give more promotions about this. Yeah, but maybe due to budget constraints, this may be not so available, but I feel like it may be a potential area that we can work on. Yeah, thank you.
So, are there any follow-up questions?
Yeah, following projects.
Projects.
Yeah.
Yes. So actually, this is our second project on the local government collaborations. So our team, we had the first project sponsored by Australia-China Council. So we conducted sister city relationships before COVID period. And also when we conduct that research, we had the opportunity to meet Professor Mori, and we said, okay, so then we can work on the Japanese. So, and hopefully our team will work together on the new projects in the future. And I think this is a topic that's interesting to a lot of people. For your second question is, I think it's a very good question about engagement of the broader community. Actually, councils are actually doing very well in this. So one example is from Hobart. So they sometimes invite student representatives to their sister city meetings. Yeah. So, and I think so it's a pity that councils have done so many things, but the community doesn't know. So that's why I think we're very happy to have this opportunity to share their stories. Thank you.
Got a couple over here, so start with you and then we'll take your question.
Thank you. My name is Leonie Boxdell and I'm a very new member of the board of the Australia-Japan Foundation. Is that better? Can people hear me now?
Maybe you want to speak a bit louder, if that's okay. Okay. That's all right. Please go ahead.
This is clearly not a technical day. My name's Leonie. I'm a very newly appointed member of the Australia-Japan Foundation board. And my question was, clearly from what's being presented today, there's a really very deep, broad set of connections nationally, but sister cities often think very locally, very specific. My question is, to what degree do sister cities between Australia and Japan connect across Japan, or if it's answerable, across Australia? Because harnessing, going back to the Lord Mayor's question, my question is, can we bring some of the interaction into a strategic way by connecting across cities? I don't know if my question's clear, but hopefully it is.
Did everyone hear that at the back? Yep, fantastic. Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, Professor Bartram, team, would you like?
Sure. I'm happy to answer that. Look, I think this is a very good question. I think our Lord Mayor's question earlier on regarding the engagement with the SDGs is very, very important question. And again, we found, that local governments and through sister cities were that was very much in emergence really, and wasn't a foundation of those relationships at this point in time. But I think going forward, I think it's a matter of one, resourcing. I think resourcing is a major challenge for enhancing and building sister city relationships from a strategic perspective, because as Shay mentioned earlier on, there's very limited amount of resources put into these relationships for a variety of reasons, and obviously there are exceptions, as our Lord Mayor has mentioned, but by and large we found that there were limited amounts of human resources and financial resources, and I think that from that perspective is possibly limiting that engagement with more strategic objectives and more national objectives. But one of the things I just think, doing this project, it's just so wonderful to see the people-to-people interactions and engagement around culture, around issues around sustainability, the environment, and cultural and mutual understanding. But having said that, we did find very limited evidence of, and as Nicola pointed out correctly, and we were surprised by this as well, is the limited engagement in that strategic set of objectives, limited engagement through the SDGs, and also limited engagement in business to business relationships and links. So I think that's an area of future research and future engagement, but there's an enormous potential in these relationships, and the enthusiasm and you can see that from literally over 40% of local governments completed our questionnaire, which is pretty astonishing when you think about it. So there's enormous enthusiasm, and I think the barriers are around resourcing, both in terms of financial and human, but the interest and the passion and the long-standing engagement is there. So it's a matter of doing some, I suspect, future engagement and future research in these areas to unpack how we can facilitate greater engagement with SDGs and more strategic and business objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We actually have time for one more question, and it's been taken. I'm so sorry.
Hi, my name is Thomas. I'm a student at Monash University, and I also work at the Centre for Multicultural Youth in Carlton. I was kind of building on Professor Bartram's response there, but also on the comment made around the bandwagoning effects of a lot of these partnerships evolving in the 90s. What if you were to go to your local council as an individual or a community organisation and trying to talk about the potential that these partnerships have, what is kind of the pitch that is most effective, or you think might be most effective following your research, to kind of say, we think that this partnership should go deeper, we think that this partnership should be more thought about and discussed? Particularly, as Professor Bartram mentioned, it's incredible that 40% responded, but I'm imagining out of those that didn't respond, those might be more of those relationships that are a bit more on paper or a bit more part of the bandwagoning effect. So how do you kind of what do you think are the biggest steps to making those relationships more meaningful in the future?
Yeah, so maybe I can answer your question. We found that to maintain the sister-sister relationships, community and bilingual volunteers are extremely important. So if people volunteer to go to the council and said, "Oh, this is a good relationship, we can make it work," and I think most councils will be very happy to accept your suggestions. Yeah.
Brennan, any questions from online? Just putting you on the spot. No, all good. I did lie. We do have time for one more question, and we did actually have someone put their hand up first.
I was just going to ask about the quad. No, I think that's got it.
The quad.
Quadrilateral agreement fellowship, which was a defence, but they moved across to a cultural.
What specifically would you like to ask about the quad? Okay, would anyone like to provide a comment on that?
I think the quad is a new phenomenon, and during our research, we haven't identified actually any impact of the quad on the sister city relationship between Japan and Australia so far. I think the Australia-Japan city-city relationship has deeply embedded in the community, and that is the most important and the solid foundation for them to go ahead and the ongoing.
All right, thank you so much. Can everyone give them a round of applause for answering these questions? I really appreciate those insightful questions. And if you would like to ask more questions later on, I'm sure a number of you will be staying on after the event. So please feel free to corral around them and ask the questions that you've been burning to ask. I will also not judge you if you want to take your phones out and do a quick snap of the contact details that are on the screen right now, if you do have follow-up questions and want to talk about this report more in depth with the researchers. Now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Sally Capp, to the stage. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. It's terrific to be here. I am here today with Councillor Philip Lelou, who, as usual, positions himself in the crowd at the back, but is a long-standing leader on developing international relationships for the City of Melbourne. So pleased to be here with Councillor Lelou today. I'm really glad I know it looked like I was a little bit late, but I was actually early for what my schedule said, because I really wanted to listen to the outcomes of the research. Congratulations. And I've got a prepared speech, but I'm sort of throwing it out the window because you've prompted quite a lot of thoughts for me. And I did want to firstly really say thank you so much to Junji Shimada, who is a wonderful and active Consul General. And I think bringing in the relationships that happen at all levels of government and then across different cohorts in our community is a really important aspect of how we keep these relationships alive, and having a very active Consul General that drives cultural and trade and knowledge outcomes across our cities has been integral to us. So thank you so much, Consul General, for your work there. Now, I'm just going to get personal for a minute because I think it talks a little bit to the research findings, and that is sometimes in busy lives we forget the influences that we've had personally and how that plays out professionally. When I was a teenager, a long, long time ago, we had an exchange student from Japan, Toshiya Mori, who has remained a good friend and part of our family. He's a volcanologist. geologist and he chases erupting volcanoes around the world. Absolutely fascinating, and has been a wonderful influence on my family over the years. More recently, on holiday in Japan, our youngest son became obsessed by Japan, and this is a good thing, and decided that he needed to become fluent in Japanese and learn more about the culture. He studied at Yale University, picked up Japanese there. They have a special relationship with Japan, Yale, and he's just finished. He just arrived home yesterday, actually, after a year immersing himself in Japanese language and culture at ICU University in Tokyo. And of course, we had to visit him, so I need to practice my konnichiwa, and visited him earlier this year during cherry blossom season. There's something off my bucket list, and it was absolutely brilliant. And these personal reflections help us very much build on professional learnings and relationships as well. So I'm going to use that as a bit of a theme as I go forward in my next 8 minutes. And that's because at the City of Melbourne, we this year are celebrating 45 years of our relationship with Osaka. And I really take the point that things like resourcing and even personalities, who's leading at the time, who's focused at the time on these relationships, can have a big impact, a significance on the type of activity and the depth of activity at any one time. But the longevity of these relationships and the fact that they survive those challenges is really a testament to the value that comes from the relationships that endure even at times when resourcing or focus might wane. The reason I raised the SDGs is because, as I said, the City of Melbourne has really dedicated ourselves to SDGs. Every major initiative we have, every element of our council plan, which is our strategic business plan, is linked to an SDG, and how those efforts, those investments are going to help us deliver on progressing SDGs in our community, in our city. And part of why we've done this is so that we can create a common language and a common platform for sharing knowledge both ways with other cities around the world. The benchmarking gives us an opportunity to understand for other cities that have benchmarked where are their strengths and weaknesses, and look for those exchanges of knowledge particularly, so that we can accelerate that progress. And I do think from time to time, if we don't find those platforms of common interest, of common language, of common investment, it's difficult for relationships to be sustained. And I really think I'm actually encouraged from today, thank you to the researchers and the information that has come forward, that gives us some really good things to work on how we can continue to invest in this very, very important relationship for us. I just wanted to comment on our sister city relationships because they can be very personality driven at the time and have consequences in the future that you don't expect. Many years ago, due to our leaders at the time, the two mayors at the time, we struck up a relationship with St. Petersburg. We just this year have revoked that relationship with St. Petersburg on the basis of the ongoing war in Ukraine. Nobody would have expected to be taking that sort of action through a sister city relationship, and it has had consequences and an impact, both positive and negative, that we are managing through. I'm pleased to say that none of those things exist with our relationship with Osaka, and 45 years this year is our longest sister city relationship. And what's been absolutely key to that relationship, beyond the cultural exchanges and learning, and beyond the sort of diplomatic and I guess what would I say, the diplomatic and relationship efforts that we make, it's very much been about trade and opportunity that's been central to that relationship. And I think there does need to be some economic outcomes that bind the cities and organisations within the cities to create that longevity. So I look at where trade fell and I was actually surprised. But the realisation, I guess, for me is that at a local government level, they're not the relationships and the discussions we're necessarily having. I'll come to that in a moment. But for the organisations where we've created the introduction, where we've supported their collaboration, and therefore we all benefit from the outcomes, those are parts of the weaving, if you like, of relationships over time that really create binding outcomes. For us, in terms of our relationship with Japan and Osaka in particular, it's been around areas such as health, biotech and medical research. They have been outstanding. And also for us as a council, it's been about planning in the urban realm. And we have some very good examples on our city streets about what we've learnt from Osaka. And those partnerships continue. Our biomedical precinct is a precinct we're very proud of as Melburnians, Victorians, Australians. It ranks very highly, and the relationship that was set up in 2019 between, and I should know this off the top of my head because it's Royal Melbourne Hospital and Osaka City University Hospital has been pivotal in a current focus for us, city to city and organisation to organisation. So I do encourage all of us to look for those opportunities. In particular, there's been a very good exchange program of medical staff and students as well coming through. And then both cities have invested in scientific equipment and research where we've been able to learn from each other. Now, if we asked Royal Melbourne Hospital as part of the survey work, and maybe that could be a future project, they would say it's been an outstanding success. And then we reflect that as well, but it's not something that we're doing every day. So I don't want to lose the value of those collaborations and outcomes that have happened because of the introduction and the platform provided by a sister city relationship. I want to say as well that we do have a delegation coming here later this year from Osaka to celebrate 45 years. We've already had a lot of activity this year between the Chambers of Commerce and various other groups, including RMIT and more recent relationships. And that's something very much to celebrate. We are looking forward to welcoming the Osaka Mayor here. I've just been there in April this year, and those conversations, whether they're continuing on topics or whether they're brand new, they are the sparks of people coming together, of those ideas colliding that really create that new wave of activity going forward. And as another example, we are very supportive of Osaka having the World Expo in 2025, and we are planning to have a big presence for Victoria and Melbourne at that World Expo. And these sorts of commitments are very important for ongoing relationship building. So if you haven't worked it out, I'm a really big supporter of sister city relationships. I can see the challenges, but we can also literally see in our city the benefits that come from these relationships. But I also understand how they can wax and wane, they can peak and trough over time. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a natural thing, provided there are those significant platforms that continue the relationship and its existence as a fundamental. The scope and size of that activity can contract and expand over time. I think that's a natural thing. So for us, and what you've really reminded me today is that we need to make sure that we have that fundamental strength of the relationship to be able to withstand some of those challenges over time, and make sure that as we want to expand, that platform is still there for people to be able to launch from. From our perspective at the City of Melbourne, we'll continue to invest in the relationships that are important, but having a focus in a resource-constrained environment. We're always resource-constrained, aren't we? And priorities is really now around the SDGs. And so I would also encourage our learning from any of your future research work will be very much informed around those SDGs. Thank you so much for the opportunity for me to come and learn today, for me to be able to come and say a few words and really to say thank you to RMIT for their leadership and their research around these important relationships that create opportunities, not just at local government, but for all of the stakeholders that we represent across our city. And of course, our success really only comes from that willingness to be open to what our weaknesses are, what our strengths are, and then to be able to share those internationally to make sure that we all have relevance and we can all deliver benefits for our communities into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lord Mayor Sally Cap. I really appreciate that, and such inspiring words. I think some of the themes that really stood out to me was that common ground, finding common ground, and I think some of the themes that maybe weren't explicitly said but came through in all the examples you gave was that nature of reciprocal relationship and mutual benefit that comes from having these relationships. Now, it is my pleasure, and I know I've said that a lot, but it really is my pleasure to introduce the Consul General of Japan, Shimada-san Junji, and we very much look forward to hearing your remarks.
The Right Honourable the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Sally Cap, and Professor Tracy Taylor, and Associate Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research and Innovation, College of Business and Law, and research team members, distinguished guests, good morning and ohayou gozaimasu. Actually, it's gonna be very tough to make a speech after the brilliant speaker, the Lord Mayor. So, but it is my great pleasure to be here for the launch of this report, this Australia-Japan local government collaboration report. I would like to congratulate all the research team members and for their hard work and then dedication put into the 2-year-long project. I know the project was initiated during the COVID-19 pandemic, and you might face the lots of challenges, difficulties, and despite these difficulties, you have made, you have all completed the report, which will help us and to better understand the Japan-Australian sister city relationship. And congratulations. And actually, this morning's discussion inspired me, and I learned a lot. And then I have also the questions. Maybe later I'll talk about that. And then I would like to also take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the Australia-Japan Foundation, and then DFAT, Australian government, for sponsoring this project. Thank you very much. The sister cities play an important role in strengthening and enriching local governments and community relation between Japan and Australia. And each of these grassroots, the relationship may be a small link, but the number of these links contributes significantly to the ties between cities and even between countries. Through sister city exchange, countless intercity friendship have been forged. It gives me great joy every time I have the opportunity to attend the sister city related to events and celebrations in Victoria, South Australia, and Tasmania. And these three states which I am covering. So I would like to just few comments on these three states sister city relationship. Here in Victoria, there are 18 Japan, Australia sister cities, and some of which are celebrating milestones this year. Of course, the Osaka-Melbourne relationship, and established in 1978, Osaka-Melbourne is one of the longest and most active Japan-Australian sister city relationships, as the Lord Mayor mentioned. And over the past 45 years, Osaka and Melbourne have established numerous cooperative relationships, including official and community level delegation visit, educational exchanges, innovation and business partnership, and sporting events. As the Lord Mayor said that the new mayor of Osaka will coming to Melbourne this October. And then also I've heard that the Lord Mayor Sally Capt also privately visit Japan in April. I was very glad to hear that you stopped by Osaka, and which is my hometown. Osaka is my hometown, so I really very glad to see the development of the Osaka-Melbourne sister city relationship. And so I was delighted to hear that Lord Mayor and her family had spent a wonderful time, and your younger son is now studying at ICU in Tokyo. So Osaka is the really lovely, good city, and I hope that I am very glad to hear that the Lord Mayor enjoyed the trip in Osaka, not only Osaka but the other cities with your son, and as a free guide and interpreter. So the among many educational exchanges, recent initiatives include the strategic partnership between the University of Melbourne and Osaka University. The two cities also continue to run the Melbourne Osaka Sister City Award at the annual Victorian Speech Contest, which will be held next weekend, providing opportunities for Japanese learners in Victoria to visit and experience Osaka. In collaboration with upcoming events, more than 100 double-handed yachts participating in the Melbourne to Osaka yacht race, and organized by Sandringham Yacht Club, and are scheduled to leave Melbourne for Osaka in March 2025 to coincide with opening of Expo 2025 in Osaka, Kansai in April 2025. And so there are many activities going on between Melbourne and Osaka. And I just touch upon the other two states quickly. Sister city relations in South Australia have also been very active this year. Over the past few months, there have been a number of exchange and delegation visits between Japan and South Australian sister cities. But next Tuesday, there will be an anniversary event for Bizen City, Okayama, and Clare Gilbert Valley, and where the deputy mayor of Bizen and mayor of Clare will unveil a new friendship monument. And then also the Himeji Hyogo, famous for its has a sister city relation with Adelaide. And so they are very much enjoying the sister city relation with the between Himeji and Adelaide. And Tasmania, I would like to share with the an episode from the Yaiz-Hobart relationship, and as mentioned in the report, and the sister city relationship, and I'm talking about the history of this relationship. Data dates back to the mid-1970s, more than 40 years ago. And when then Lord Mayor of Hobart, Adaman Pleister, visited Yaizu, Shizuoka to establish a sister city relationship. There, he met with Sekiyama Fumiko, a modern dance teacher in Yaizu. As Fumiko-san participated in the exchange programs and frequently took her students to Hobart. Then the mayor and Fumiko-san grew closer and fell in love. And Fumiko-san then married the mayor and moved to Hobart in 1982. And she later became driving force behind the Yaizu-Hobart relationship, contributing significantly to student exchange programs for over 25 years. And in 2016, she was awarded the Order of the Rising Sun Silver Rays by the Emperor of Japan. So this is really a sister city, and the mayor was so active. So, and so now it's the number of the Australian tourists to Japan has exceeded pre-pandemic levels, and traveling to Japan has become a kind of boom again. And JETRO reported that the number of Australian visits Japan last month was 35,600, which was 2.1% more than in July 2019, the pre-pandemic. The number of students, Japanese students coming to study at Australian university have been increasing as well. So this will be a kind of new wave. And after the COVID-19 pandemic, the Japan-Australia sister city relationship will be revitalized as suggested in this report. We look forward with great anticipation to new development in the Japan-Australia relationships. And I thought that the new technology will affect the sister city relationship. And remember 30 years, 40 years ago, we communicate by mail. And so it takes 2 or 3 weeks to, So now it's you can communicate through the internet and immediately, and you don't write the letter and the card any longer. So that will also affect the way of the sister city relationship. And then also I have today I had a question that whether the number of the sister city relationship will increasing or remain the same or decreasing. Because sometimes some mayors in Australia or in Japan ask me that we are looking for new partner of the Australia, and do you have any recommendation? And or some mayor ask me they are looking for the new partners in Japan, and sometimes I have difficulties in answering those questions, and because of the financial constraints and human being constraints, and so but we have to think about whether the like the Osaka-Melbourne relationship is it's a kind of a big success story, and I think I'm hoping that the other city relationship will follow Osaka-Melbourne model, and but that's my homework. But anyway, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those who have involved and will continue to be involved in Japan-Australia sister city relationship. In particular, the people of the sister cities, volunteers, local government, sister city related to associations such as Sister Cities Australia, and then CLEAR office in Sydney. And once again, and congratulations on the publication of the report. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. We really appreciate it. I think, for me, what stood out was the friendship between sister city relationships that evolve, the highlighting of the milestones and what an incredible history we have in Australia, Japan, sister cities, and your love for Osaka. And it's just amazing to see the love that is coming through of different cities and the pride as well in that relationship. Now it's my great delight to introduce Ms. Wendy Holdenson, board member for the Australia-Japan Foundation. Please give her a warm welcome.
Hello to all distinguished guests here today, and a big congratulations to RMIT for hosting this wonderful launch of such an insightful report. And an even bigger congratulations to the research team behind the report. The 6-person team has pulled together some fascinating content. I can't wait to share it with my Australia-Japan Foundation board in due course. My name is Wendy Holdenson, and local government is very close to my heart because my father was the co-chief executive officer of the Greater Geelong Council. And at 16, I first went to Japan to my father's sister district, Rotary Club, as their exchange student for 1 year. And it was that scholarship that changed the trajectory of my life. And in fact, during my career, I have spent 4 years representing Australia, driving its investment and trade agenda at the Osaka Australian Consulate General. So the ties are very deep with many of you in the audience today. And it is such a pleasure to represent the Australia-Japan Foundation, or AJF, at this launch of a report that brings our countries even closer together. As an AJF board member, I'm always delighted to see a project that we can support come to fruition. And I actually remember agreeing to the sponsorship of this project back in 2020. So I got that one right. The AJF was established close to 50 years ago in 1976. At this time, Australia and Japan had developed strong commercial ties following World War II. But there was a recognition by governments on both sides that there was so much more to do to build a more formal basis to the relationship and broaden the linkages into new areas. So this led to the signing of the 1976 Basic Treatment of Friendship and Cooperation and the establishment of the AJF. The main objective of the AJF was to encourage a closer relationship between Australia and Japan at the community level and to further mutual knowledge and understanding between our countries. In its early years, the AJF encouraged building community linkages, and one of its key early initiatives was to support the development of sister city relationships. So, in 1982, we, the AJF, hosted a sister city symposium attended by over 200 representatives of Australian and Japanese sister cities. And a number of delegates from Australian towns and cities still seeking such a partnership in Japan also attended and were able to build at that occasion on new connections made through the symposium. And I would like to suggest that the same thing happens today, that we build on the connections we're making with one another today for something new. And according to Professor Bartram, there are now 107 sister city relationships between Australia and Japan. These connections are important for many reasons, not least because they provide an opportunity for direct people-to-people engagement. I know many Australians here who've had their first encounters with Japanese people and culture through visits by Japanese groups to their own towns or cities. I'm one of them. Similarly, I know many Japanese people who first travelled to Australia through school or community visits arranged through their sister city arrangements. So based on these initial experiences, many people have been inspired to build even greater linkages between the two countries. Although most activities have taken place between sister cities, through the city's programs, we at the AJF have provided support on occasion where there has been a special objective or purpose. For example, when a community choir visited 3 regional sister cities in Japan to sing with Japanese choirs, conduct workshops and perform for local residents. And also when the First Nation performers from Toowoomba travelled to Takatsuki in Osaka to perform at official functions and carry out interactive educational workshops. And just as the research team of the report that's to be launched today found, during the pandemic, it was obviously difficult for local governments to pursue face-to-face activities under their sister city arrangements. We did some very innovative things to maintain engagement. We heard earlier about the importance of educational exchange. Well, one great initiative of such exchange was the Australian Olympic Committee's Connect Tomodachi 2020 project. This program connected 300 Australian classrooms with 300 Japanese classrooms for online engagement around the time of the Tokyo Olympics. And the enthusiasm for this program on the Australian side is explained by the large number of Australian schools that teach Japanese language and culture, and it's testament to the ongoing popularity of Japan here. Another important program that has connected Australians with Japanese local governments over several decades is the JET program. I'm sure many of you have met JET personnel in your travels. And over the years, thousands of young Australians have been deployed to towns and cities across Japan to meet, to work in local communities. And these young Australians, without exception, are excellent ambassadors for Australia and have made an incredible contribution to the people-to-people linkages between our countries. It's a great pleasure and honour to be here at the launch of the Australia-Japan Local Government Collaboration Research Report, and I look forward to taking the report to many, many audiences in Sydney where I live, but also beyond. Just a final note though, to let you know that the 2023 AJF grant round opened only last week, and it will close on Friday, the 15th of September. We welcome innovative projects that will create and strengthen our relationship with Japan. If you're thinking of applying, please read the guidelines carefully on our AJF website. That's dfat.gov.au/AJF. And also feel free to seek me out over lunch and let me allow you to get to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Wendy Holdenson. Really appreciate those remarks and what a deep personal connection you have. Thank you for sharing that. Well, as we come to a close of this enlightening event, I know that you have all done a lot of listening. I hope you've done some thinking, and I hope that this has sparked much action into the future. And maybe that's what we've observed here today in the development of this research and launch of this amazing research report, is that there's been a lot of listening, definitely some thinking involved, and that it sparks much action for all of us as we think about the Australia-Japan sister city relationships. So I'd like to thank our distinguished speakers and panelists once again. Yes. And also, of course, the Australia-Japan Foundation. And also a special thank you to the volunteers that assisted with the translation, Ms. Chow, who translated the Japanese interviews into English, and Ms. Lee, who assisted in organising the materials and contacting councils. Your hard work and dedication have been essential in making this research accessible to all. And of course, a heartfelt thank you to all of you who have taken the time to attend this particular event in person and online. As we conclude, I do encourage each and every one of us to continue fostering the people-to-people relationship and community-based bonds between Australia and Japan. And whether that's through cultural or student exchange, collaboration, or personal friendships, we're all involved in strengthening this remarkable relationship. So I encourage you to stay for refreshments and continue increasing those people-to-people connections. Thank you all once again. Well,